the Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 461, 512, gives us some parameters under which we can use the lottery dollars. Most of this information and the verbiage I'm using is taken from the statute itself. So as you can see that the use of lottery dollars from the state to the counties, the state says that we have to put them in a dedicated fund, which means the dollars are locked up. They're not available for anything. In particular, it says that they may not be placed in the general fund of the county. So meaning that they have to be dedicated to furthering economic development. Click. So what does that mean? So specifically, the ORS says the funds can be used for creating new jobs and can be used for preventing the loss of existing jobs, including training and or retraining workers. And I want to point out the first little figure there is an airline pilot, not a sheriff. So just to say.
I think that what's been happening is that the counties are using it the way that they feel is most important for their economic welfare. So
that's exactly right.
Right. So, and I think that's why there was a certain amount of discretion in it, and I think that's why the state hasn't really worried about it, because every county has different needs for their economic development. As far as us using it for a communications type program, I think that's absolutely critical, because no one knows about us unless we tell them about us. And I think that that is going to be very, very important for us to make that link, that it's part of our economic development. And I don't think anybody can argue with that in using economic development funds for that.
From my perspective, I'm doing this whether the Courier signs up or not. If at the end of the day we get a spot in the Chamber newsletter, or we get it on our website, or we have to publish it ourselves, that's what we control. I don't control the Courier. If they're not receptive, they're not receptive. That doesn't mean I'm not going to make every effort to do it. So they're not the only outlet. I mean, we've just got to work with what we have if they're not receptive. But I'm not going to not do it because they say they don't want to meet with me, or they don't want to accept my 500 words and they'll accept yours. You know, I'm still going to write my 500 words, and it's going to be on the website or wherever else I can get it. Maybe we buy a billboard. I don't know. Whatever. We'll extend that as an offer. It's not received. It's not received. I don't know what to do with that. So we could, we could pay. If they don't give us a spot, I'm not exactly excited about that. But those are the things we'll have to address once we talk to them. So. The challenge is to try to address, like the city of Grants Pass puts out in their monthly water and sewer bills, a monthly newsletter. We really don't have a mechanism to accomplish that. Our bill or our correspondence with our constituents is annual, and it has to do with the tax bills, and that's never very positive. As far as they get this thing, and then they're supposed to read something about the positive things their money's doing. I hope. We really don't have the opportunity to do that in a tax bill, and so looking at trying to find low-cost alternatives to a publication that would go out monthly to all of the residents of Josephine County to just better explain some of the situations that are covered in the media, but not always covered with 100% accuracy or the entire perspective. So that's kind of the goal.
Yeah. Basically, to provide an objective, non-partisan, non-apolitical, just
this is the
straight information. Yeah. And so now I did, I'll advise the board, I did ask Anna, I sent the infamous Fence to Nowhere news article to Anna, and so if the board's interested in gleaning her observations, I would definitely invite the board to ask her about that. It's not going to be painful to hear what she has to say about that.
Yeah, it was.
But it's probably worth discussing. But she's ready basically to, I think, talk a little bit about communications policy and then just hear what you have to say and do a discussion.
Okay, great.
Fine with it.
Okay, well, thanks, and I will be brief because I know that you read kind of this memo I put together. But I will say that you're not alone. I think that local governments across the state are in the same situation as you, where you are operating on very limited funds. Generally, I think government right now across the nation is somewhat suspect to its own citizens and the media, so you have that challenge as well. And when you're working with limited funds, hiring a communications person seems to the public oftentimes as kind of an extraneous job, when in fact it's really, really important, because I think that the public does need to know and understand what you're doing on their behalf. They elect you to represent them, and telling that story does require a dedicated person. But you don't have the funds for that. So in that, I do think that there are ways with a low-cost budget for you to enhance the way that you're communicating to the public the good work you're doing on their behalf. And I will say that it doesn't necessarily come without controversy. The decisions that you're being put in a position to make oftentimes are controversial, but the public still does need to understand the rationale behind your decisions. And I think that the public will also, even if they disagree with the decision, I think that the more forward and transparent you are in your decision-making process, the more respect you'll get from the citizens. I think that the other piece is, if you do know something is going to be controversial, you'd rather tell the story on your own terms. I think it's really easy to shy away from something that you think might be bad news, so it's easier just to kind of wait for it to come out in another way. I think if something's going to be bad news or something's going to be controversial, it's much better for you to position it, you to be forward, you seek out the reporter, you seek out the ways to share the decision or the bad news with the citizens in your terms, because otherwise you're going to be chasing it and be on the defense. And the other piece is just to be accessible. Accessibility is really critical, whether it's to the citizens directly or to reporters. And I think there's different ways you can do that. You're very busy, I know, but there's a lot of opportunities to establish either weekly sit-downs with your local beat reporter. I would highly advise a monthly editorial board visit as a commission if you're allowed to do that. I know that the three of you together makes a quorum, so I don't know if that's feasible. But I think just being accessible to talk about the things that are going on in the community, what you're hearing from citizens with reporters, so they're hearing it from you, not just from the vocal minority that are often disgruntled.
I think that what's been happening is that the counties are using it the way that they feel is most important for their economic welfare. So
That's exactly right.
right. So, and I think that's why there was a certain amount of discretion in it, and I think that's why the state hasn't really worried about it, because every county has different needs for their economic development. As far as us using it for a communications type program, I think that's absolutely critical, because no one knows about us unless we tell them about us. And I think that that is going to be very, very important for us to make that link, that it's part of our economic development. And I don't think anybody can argue with that in using economic development funds for that.